Well, I did research on your career. You've been working for 5 decades in Hollywood. Very
I know.
impressive. You started out as Harrison Ford's double in Indiana Jones, your credits are long. Superman, the James Bond movies, Blade Runner. So you doubled for Harrison Ford a couple times, right?
Oh, I've done a lot with Harrison. Yeah, an old buddy of mine, and I've done 7 or 8 Bonds, and yeah, I go way back over the years. And I've always loved epic movies. I've always been very lucky that I was physically fit and at my peak when all these lovely genres of Superman, Indiana Jones, Bond, and all these sort of epics were coming out. Bridge Too Far and Young Winston, where they were making epic movies, and I think the epic value of it has always stuck in my mind. And if there's a choice between anything of when I'm offered a movie, I'll go for the epic one, hopefully in a foreign country as well. I love to travel. I love the challenge of working in foreign countries. I've done 60 or 70 countries. Like Thailand, I've done 16, 17 movies in Thailand. So,
Oh, wow.
I've worked in them over and over again. I do love traveling. It's the one adventure you can have these days that's legal.
And you're an action director now. You've done second unit directing. You've directed yourself. And speaking of epic, The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, season two. That's pretty epic. I mean,
it's it's
that's a big undertaking,
It's
right?
it's totally epic, which is the great attraction to it. There's not many epic things you can do these days with economics and everything else. And as I said before, people have said to me, Vic, I didn't know you did TV when I told them Rings of Power. I'm not making TV, I'm making an epic movie. This Rings of Power is an 8-hour movie. We just have to divide it up and give yourself time to go and have a coffee and the bathroom break. But it's the storyline flows through, and it is an epic, and I want to do epic action on an epic movie, because nowadays when you look at it, people sit in their home theaters or even in their living room. They got massive TVs now. Everybody's got a huge TV,
Hmm.
and they're sitting there. So their viewing ratio is the same as if you're in Leicester Square in the Odeon. Your viewing ratio is exactly the same as being in Leicester Square, but you're in your sitting room close to the big wide screen. So, and plus you've got high def, so everything we do can be criticized in minute detail. So it's important we do epic on a grand scale, and that's why I've always approached it as. I've done shots in it. I used to call my David Lean shots, which is big, wide vistas and two little horses galloping across the frame. They don't do that in TV. They only do that in epics like Lawrence of Arabia and things, which
Right.
is what influenced me over the years.
So there were some pretty big action pieces in season one. So is there going to be one in season two that's going to, surpass anything you did in season one?
That was my whole aim in this one. Very, very proud of what we did in season one. But when you think about it, we were just setting the foundations, the groundwork, and we're just learning how the story is told, how the balance of the action is, what the characters are, what they can achieve, where they can climb to, and then so season two comes along. Now you've got a good base. It's like Indiana Jones. By the time we got to the third Indiana Jones, we really knew what we were doing. And this
Yeah.
is the second Lord of the Rings of Power, and we now knew what the baseline was. And as you say, had a wonderful epic battle sequence in that, charges, and I wanted to out epic the epic of that one, and I think we did on this one. I was working with Charlotte Brandstrom, wonderful director, on the last one and on this one, and with J.A. Bayona, lovely Spanish guy, on the first one. And we all have the same viewpoint, the very same approach, the same wish for the epicness of it. And we wanted to make it an epic charge. And the only way to make things like charges differently nowadays, because we've seen horse charges from silent movie days onwards. They're wonderful ones, and Charge of the Light Brigade and John Ford's and all the rest of them,
Hmm.
and even Young Winston stuff I did. The only way you can change it is the way you shoot it, because it's whatever it is. It's a horse galloping across the ground, whether it's one horse or 200 horses, but it's how you photograph that. And technology has improved so vastly and so quickly with drones. We all know about drones now, but when we started in the first Power of the Rings, drones were still quite unusual to do with horses and everything else, and horses don't care about them. They get used to things really, really quickly. But there's also other cameras now. The cameras are much smaller. They can transmit. You look at a Formula One race. You're in a car doing 200 odd miles an hour, and you can read the guy's speedometer and everything else crystal clear. So it's that technology, and that's transmitted across, you know, a racetrack. So it's that technology we can bring to make shooting movies. So you can get your camera right in amongst the horse's hooves and their shoulders and their nostrils and things like that, and getting the audience into the battle, because the charge, there's nothing more inspiring, not for me anyway, as a horseman, is galloping amongst a load of horses, the noise, the sound, the smell, and the vibration. If you could just try and transmit some of that into the movie you're making for the audience to experience, then you've got everybody hooked. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I was rewatching the first season, and that scene where they're galloping to save the village from the orcs. I was
Yes,
kind of
cool,
like,
isn't
you
it?
could feel that. You can feel like the pounding of the hoofs on the
Yeah,
ground. It was kind
yeah.
of amazing. I mean, that's sound effects too, but it
But
has to
it
match
is,
the visuals.
when we shoot it, I'm excited. I'm watching them go by me, you know, and it is, oh, the whole ground's vibrating. It's really exhilarating. It's marvelous.
Mm.
Premoral. Anyway, yeah, it's great fun.
Do they capture the sound kind of to get the atmosphere as
Yeah,
well?
yeah, we put remote sound recordings all over the place. The horses gallop right by them, so you hear the hooves thundering up to and then away from, you know, all that stuff.
Oh,
It's all captured for real. Yeah, it's not people with coconuts going. But
pretending to
no,
gallop.
it really makes it exciting for me anyway. You know, there is sound and smell are such important things. You know, I saw a Bullet, one of the great car chase movies of all time.
Hmm.
I saw it once on a 16 mm projection, and the sound broke down, and it was not half as good as it was when the sound was on. And years and years ago, I realized what a vast contribution sound makes to a movie, the real sound, and then add music to it. And you know, it's all those little things that you want to try and capture in reality as well. So as I say, when you hear the crescendo of the who's building up and then dying away, and then you hear the crash when they all hit steel on steel and they all start fighting, it adds a lot to it in my little world anyway.
So can you tease us with what's going to be like the biggest set piece or biggest action piece?
I think Ep 7 is the one for me. That's the one where I think we peaked, and it rolls over into 8 as well. So eight has got a lot going for it, but it's
Mm.
peaking and getting ready for season 3.
Is it easier? I see the pictures in the background, and obviously a lot of the stuff is an open field, right? Is that much easier to handle versus being in on the set?
It's harder actually, and I
Much
try
harder.
and vary it. People say to me, "What's the hardest stunt you've ever done?" And I always say being original, and it's the same as a director, being original. Everything's been done before, so how can I give it an original edge? And you mustn't have repetition. After 2 or 3 things, when it starts getting repetitious, then you get bored. You've seen that, okay? Your brain does a computer on it, just okay, delete, delete, delete. I've seen that. So we go from an open field, and then we crash into woods, and then you get chased through woods, and then you go into a bog across a river. So and horses get stuck in the sand, in the sinking sand and stuff like that. So I've tried to create all those different moments, and it is great, an open field like that. It gives you the opportunity to get a vast amount of horses and get them thundering along at full speed and get cameras moving all around them, and then take them into the woods. Forget that, we've done the big vista shot. Now get the interesting stuff in the woods where people come out of the trees and there's fire, and just varying it up all the time.
I'm glad you say that because I have issues sometimes with some directors that they kind of repeat their designs, their monster designs. It becomes repetitive, and I'm
Yeah,
like, can you give us an original design that doesn't,
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
harken back to an older movie? Because I get tired of repetitive, things. They tend to just repeat themselves a
Yeah,
lot.
and it's such an easy thing to do, an easy trick to fall into as well. You have to keep saying, no, 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 I've done that, I've done that. I know it looks good, but it's worked, and we don't do it again. Now it's like showing a card trick twice. It's like, I saw it, I know you did it. It's that, or telling a joke 3 times. It's the punchline means nothing the third time. So
So
yeah,
what's the? Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was just saying, I'm very aware of that. Sorry, carry on.
So obviously there's a lot of horses. What is the most amount of horses you've had on the set?
The most I've ever had would be 300.
Wow.
I did Four Feathers in years ago in Morocco. I had 2,000 people. I had 1,500 foot soldiers, 300 horses, and a couple of hundred camels. Yeah, so it's a lot.
So
So
nowadays, do you you only have maybe say like 100, and then everything is CGI'd in the background, the horses
yeah,
and the riders?
it's not practical, and it's cost wise or physically nowadays to have much more than that,
Hmm.
especially in England. And we're shooting with 8 hour days, and we're in pouring rain 80% of the time, so the fields are getting wet and boggy. And I found a wonderful estate, English estate, which is literally 10 minutes from my house in England, where we shot this battle. And they were very kind enough to give us this vast estate to work on. And we literally would, sometimes during the day, we'd move over to 3 patches of ground because the amount of horses were churning it up. So it is very difficult to shoot in those climates. If you had any more than that, you just wouldn't be able to, the ground wouldn't be able to sustain it. You know, I've shot in
Hmm.
Spain and places like that where the hard ground, you can just keep going in the same area over and over again. But this is a whole new problem. It's only gets dangerous for the horses when they go in too much deep into the mud. And so there's all those things you have to take into account. But it's hard work having that amount of horses and keeping them safe. You know, they trip into bash
Hmm.
into each other and trip each other over, and you know it's all without not without its risks. So you have to take all that into account as well when you're dreaming up these crazy ideas.
Well, I'm glad you're taking care of the horses because I always worry about them when I watch them on screen. I'm like, I hope they were safe afterwards.
Yeah.
Um,
There's an
so,
interesting thing on this. When we finished one day, the horse master, Camilla Proust, said to me, "You realize the horse that Elrond's riding, that is the great grandson of the horse you brought back from Spain for Legend for Ridley Scott, one of the white
oh,
stallions in Legend, the unicorns. I sold it to her father when she was a little kid 30 years ago.
oh wow.
And it's been a breeding stallion. And Elrond's horse is the great grandson of that horse I brought over from Sevilla.
Oh, amazing. That's so cool. Thank you for that little fun fact.
Yeah. But no, we do look after our horses and say they've had 3 generations with that fellow, you know. So yeah, they're our friends and everything else. You know, you love them like your family.
Oh, that's nice. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed my talk with you and the information you gave me, and have a great day.
Okay, Lupe, thank you.